Not unusual for people to come to us at the sacristy for blessings of all kinds, especially after Mass. Many years ago, in one parish after a Mass, a parishioner approached me and asked for a pray-over daw and blessing. Siyempre, tinanong ko, what do you need a blessing for? He looked at me with some hesitation, and then he looked around, maybe to make sure that nobody else was listening. And with very sad eyes, he said to me, "Father, feeling ko failure ako sa buhay ko. Bakit ba parang napakamalas ko sa lahat ng bagay?" Let me say that in English. "Father, I feel I am a failure in my life. I wonder why I am so unlucky in almost anything I get myself into." He did not wait for me to pose a follow-up question. Immediately, nag-explain naman siya. He said, I feel that anything I do ends up as a failure. Anything at all. Career, love life, family, business, relationships, kahit ano. Parang wala na yata akong pinasok sa buhay ko na hindi pumalpak. Wala yata akong kaswerte-swerte sa buhay. And then he asked this question, pinaparusahan kaya ako? Am I being punished? I looked into his eyes, and then I said, I hope you don't mind if I ask you this question. Are you feeling guilty about anything? Nag-react siya, and he was surprised by the question. He could not answer me immediately. And then he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, well, tinanong mo kung pinaparusahan ka ba. You ask if you are being punished. Are there certain things that you have done in your past that you think you deserve punishment for? Or anything that you might be feeling guilty about, but you never gave it a proper closure or you never came to terms with it? Ang mabilis niyang sagot marami ho. Yes, a lot. But he said, how am I supposed to deal with them? So I told him, maybe what he needed was not just a pray over and a blessing, but a sacrament of reconciliation. The sacrament of reconciliation. Alam nyo, ganyan talagang trumabaho ang konsensya ng tao. The conscience has many ways of reminding us to set things right in our lives, to do good and to reject evil, to make amends for the wrong that we have done. And, you can end up punishing yourself unconsciously by preempting punishment or by conditioning yourself to fail before you even try, because you have unconsciously made up your mind na galit sa iyo ang Diyos, that God is angry with you. But something inside you remains defiant, and perhaps you might even say, ano pakialam ko? What do I care? I am the master of my own life anyway. Ang tawag ko dyan, an inner conflictedness. And you can end up getting alienated from your very self. I know some people who end up hating themselves. You can become your worst enemy. Some people, they can become emotionally, psychologically, or even spiritually disabled or incapacitated predisposed at each time to fail. Well, mabuti na lang if, like the paralytic in today's gospel, you are surrounded all the time by friends who care for you, people who are willing to carry you when you are not able to function very well. You know, I have met a lot of people who have fallen into addictions of all sorts dahil mababa yung self-esteem. They get to feel confident only pag nasa influence sila ng alcohol or drugs. But when they sober up, bumabalik na naman at mas malakas pa yung sense of guilt and low self-esteem. And the constant message that seems to keep playing in their unconscious, especially in those who are victims of abuse in their life. The constant message that they hear is, wala kang kwentang tao. You are a good-for-nothing piece of trash. And by allowing this message to keep repeating itself inside them, they actually end up living their lives like trash. And they never get to appreciate the gifts or their gifts in life, or to live life with gratitude, with meaning, and with a sense of purpose. Ang galing ni Jesus, you know, ang una niyang in-address yung spiritual paralysis before the physical. Kasi very often, we do not realize how profoundly our spiritual disposition impacts our physical condition. Let me now go back to my story about the man who called himself a failure. Nung sinabi ko sa kanya, baka naman what you need is not just a blessing, but the sacrament of reconciliation. He said to me, "You mean confession ho, Father?" And I had to explain to him that the sacrament of reconciliation has many components, and that confession was only one of them. That's a common mistake. Pag sinabing sacrament of reconciliation, you equate that with confession. Hindi. Ang confession ay isang sangkap lang ng sacrament of reconciliation. Actually, 4 yung sangkap. Confession, contrition, penance, and absolution. You know, I once told you that hindi maganda yung masyadong exaggerated na emphasis on sinfulness. Pero hindi rin maganda yung totaling mawalan ng sense of sinfulness. There is wisdom also in the church's teaching tungkol sa kasalanan, about sin and forgiveness, and our need for reconciliation. Ano ba yung confession? Simple, pag-amin. Confession is simply to make or to have the maturity to admit our shortcomings, to own up to our mistakes. Ano ba yung contrition? I'm sorry. Yun lang. To be contrite is to feel sorry because you have caused others to become miserable. Ano ba yung penance? Well, ang penance ay pagkukumpuni. It is simply the resolve to make amends, to do damage repair if we have caused damage. At ano yung absolution? Spiritual liberation. What you experience when you are forgiven and when you learn to be forgiving as well. We often project on God our incapacity to forgive. Kaya malakas tayo mag-develop ng idea of a God as fearful, punishing, parang nakakatakot. Palagi kang natatakot, baka parusahan ka niya. Kaya siguro ang lakas ng dating sa atin, Nung John 3:16 to 17, very often 3:16 lang yung alam nung iba eh. Yung for God so loved the world, He gave us His only Son. Ay yung kasunod nun, ang sabi niya, hindi naman sinugo ng Diyos ang anak niya para parusahan tayo. God did not send His Son to the world to condemn the world, but to save it. Kaya yung good news of Jesus to the paralytic was, after forgiving his sins, tumayo ka, pulutin mo yung banig mo, at umuwi ka na. Go home. Go home. I like that expression, go home. When you are not at home, you are a stranger. You are an alien. Stop being a stranger to yourself. Stop being an alien to yourself. Rather, be at home within yourself. Remember, ang business ni God, hindi naman to condemn, but to save. It's to forgive, not to punish. You just need to do yourself a favor, which is to follow your conscience, to sincerely seek reconciliation by having the humility to own up to our shortcomings, by learning to be sorry, by setting things right, by having the courage to ask for forgiveness. You do not need to condemn yourself to your past. God wants us to come to terms with the past because He is more interested in our future. Tandaan niyo, remember the words, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future.